Ready? I put the reading up there for this week early, so those of you who needed it could catch up. But time's up. You are where you are. We are starting, as you can see from that slide. Is that the right slide? We're starting at Genesis 48. This week's reading began with Genesis 48. We just finished up Genesis, last few chapters there. And then we hit the first big part of Exodus, first 18 chapters. So a lot of stuff in there, as you probably know if you read it. So let's get started, and we'll just yell out because I'm probably going to be looking down, and I won't be looking at you when you want me to notice you. So yell out if you need to. You're welcome to put your hand up and see if that works. But we'll probably have to do with the yelling thing if you want to interrupt and ask a question, especially you, Carla. You're way up here on my blind side, so you got to yell. But I'm used to Carla. You got a question already? We're starting in Genesis chapter 48. Genesis chapter 48 is, our status here is Jacob is old and dying, but he still kind of knows what he's doing because you see that he blesses two of his grandsons. Those two grandsons happen to be the sons of who? Joseph's sons. And he gives them a birthright that belongs to pretty much Reuben and Simeon, doesn't it? He gives a double portion. He blesses them, and he does a weird thing when he blesses them. If you remember the reading, the way there was some describing of how it was done physically, but Jacob begins to offer his blessing, and he's very old, and I think his eyesight might have been failing, but he crosses his hands once he realizes who's who, it seems. And Joseph doesn't want him to, he's a little bit alarmed, isn't he? He reacts to that clearly, but Jacob knows what he's doing. And he says that, no, he's given the better blessing to Ephraim. Wait, is that right? No, Manasseh, right? Which one was it? Sabbath, choose Ephraim and Manasseh? I can't remember now. But we'll see it on the map in a second. Okay, Manasseh, is that how you say that? Okay. But he crosses his hands because he knows exactly what's going to happen in the future. Joseph is very clear-minded, it seems, despite his old age, and that he's about to die, because the things that he's saying here and that he's going to say to all his sons in a minute, they come true, we see later. And the words of verse 20 I find very interesting. If you notice that there, chapter 48, verse 20 says, "May you be like Ephraim," and how do you say that name again? Manasseh. I'll say it wrong every time. The Jews still do that today. They offer that blessing, and they don't offer it. They don't say, "May you be like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob," but they say, "May you be like," those guys, the two sons of Joseph. Now, are there other grandsons besides these two that are blessed, or are there other grandsons, period? Yes. There's even other grandsons that Joseph is the father of, but none of them get this kind of blessing, do they? Jacob knows what he's doing, and we'll see that. Now we're going to this is my busiest slide, so don't think it's going to be awful like this, but I got a little crazy here. First, we want to see who the sons of Jacob are, so we have all of them in a little symbol represented, kind of based on the description of them. But in this chapter, Genesis chapter 49, we have Jacob, after he's blessed the two grandsons that are going to more or less kind of be like a tribe of their own. He blesses all his sons here. And if you look closely at the blessings, each one, I need to print out. Each one comes true. So let's go through them as much as we can, and shout out if you got a comment or something. Basically, Jacob's telling the future here. The first four guys there are the big ones, aren't they? Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, as well as Joseph. And there's multiple mothers represented there. Anybody remember who mothered who? Yeah, it's difficult. So I cheated. I put this on here. There's Leah's kids on the top row, and there's Rachel's kids on the bottom row, and then we kind of mixed up the concubine children there on the bottom. Okay, so let's look at their blessings one by one if we can. Reuben, he should be the preeminent one. He's firstborn, right? He should get the birthright. But will he get it? He will not. Anybody want to shout out what he did? Somebody did shout it out. I didn't really think anybody would. He slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah. And likewise, Simeon and Levi, they're kind of in trouble here. They massacred men from where over what? Does anybody want to? Shechem. It was Dinah. Dinah, and they killed all the men of Shechem after the circumcision of them in revenge for their sister Dinah. It says that, interestingly enough, that they'll be scattered. Let's see if I can jump ahead. Yeah, look at that. On this map, this is not convenient. I'm tethered. So if you look where Manasseh's huge, and that jives with Jacob's prophecy. And here's the two that we just mentioned, and it says they'll be scattered. Well, you see where Simeon wound up in the midst of Judah. And of course, this is in the future. This is a few hundred years in the future. Simeon, sort of in the middle of Judah, kind of is assimilated by the tribe of Judah. And then up here, where's Simeon where'd he go? Point him out, yell him out. Where's Simeon? Oh, he was right there. The other one is Levi. Oh, they don't have a spot, do they? Levi is the priestly tribe, so they don't have land, do they? So they're everywhere. So those two being scattered, it makes sense, doesn't it, later on? And what's important about Judah? Let's go back. Jesus comes from that tribe, doesn't he? It'll be the royal tribe. There's some neat things said about the tribe of Judah, aren't there? Some I wrote down, they'll be the royal tribe. They're represented by a lion, the king of the jungle. This description was neat. They'll hang on to the scepter until the rightful ruler comes. Take a shot at who that is. Anyone? That's one of those easy ones, yeah. Jesus. The ESV says tribute. That's an interesting word. The translation differences in this section of reading this week are really kind of interesting. And I don't want to tell you how much time I wasted looking at various translations in different verses because there were so many different words that made things more interesting and gave you more insights. Other translations say that they'll retain the scepter of the tribe of Judah until Shiloh comes. And that, from what my reading says, is that means until the one whom it belongs. So that, again, would be Jesus. Zebulun, they'll live by the sea. If you look at the map, though, it's only 15 or 20 miles to the water. You see where they are? That's not close enough to the beach for me. If you're going to tell me I'm going to live by the sea, I want to be a little bit closer to the water than that. Issachar will be agricultural, and they did inherit rich farmland. Where are they? Somebody help me find Issachar. There they are. Yeah, they have rich farmland. Dan, it means judge. Does anybody remember a judge that came from the tribe of Dan, descended from the tribe of Dan? Very famous judge. It's the only judge I can think of if you ask me in a quiz question, like name one judge from, it's Samson. Yeah, somebody said it out there, Samson. Gad were a tribe of warriors. In 1 Chronicles 12, a bunch of them served King David in battle, and the weakest is described as being able to take on 100 people, 100 regular fighters, I think is how it's described. So they're the kind of guys you want on your side in a fight, and there's some more like that too. Asher means happy one, which good food will make you happy, and they're described, if you go back to that slide, Asher is described as having rich food. And that's, interestingly enough, Zilpah's only two were Asher and Gad. If they did get a fertile strip of land on the Mediterranean, but then later on we find out that they stayed home instead of going to fight with the other tribes, so they kind of got a bad rap for that. Naphtali is one of Bilhah's kids, and there's some weird things. I'm not sure what the name means. Not much there that's nice to look at. Anybody have anything on Naphtali? Sounds like the Hebrew word for wrestle or struggle. Does anybody remember why that child might have been named something that means struggle? Well, yeah, it's a good guess, but it had more to do with, Rachel named him. And Rachel named him because Leah was cranking out the kids, and Rachel was not happy about losing that battle. And so she had this one by the concubine, Bilhah, and so she named him Struggle to represent her struggle with her sister. Let's see. Oh, they kind of disappeared. They got a bad. Let's go forward. They got a bad spot if you're going to be invaded from the north. Which, does that happen later? They did. They were kind of on the cutting edge of getting beat up by the folks from Assyria later on. And I like this part. If you go back. Now look where Naphtali is. They're right on the Sea of Galilee. I mean, that's some serious lakefront property. In fact, I found this neat reference by Josephus, who said the shore of the lake was an earthly paradise. And there's also a reference later, I didn't note the scripture, but one of Solomon's son-in-laws ends up getting the prefect or governor's job over that particular province. So that's kind of a sweet position or posting, I would imagine, that only somebody like a king's son-in-law would get. That includes, I imagine, a nice lakefront home. All right, Joseph, his descendants got his. Let's go back. Benjamin, there's the other warrior tribe. Does anybody remember what it says about Benjamin? There's some really cool stuff in Judges and 1 Samuel about them fighting. They produced warriors like later a king of Israel. Anybody remember who that was that came from their tribe? King Saul was from their tribe, so that makes Jonathan, Saul's son, also a Benjamite. Ehud, who was a judge, was one of them as well. But they were almost wiped out in Judges 20, chapter 20. And if you read that account, it's fascinating because while they were almost wiped out, they did serious damage before that. Another group of guys that if you were in a big fight, you'd want the Benjamites on your side because they wiped out thousands of men before they were lured into an ambush and almost wiped out themselves. Some of this stuff, I know that was fast to run through, but I mean, really in the end, don't you conclude that God works through whatever? I mean, he works through anything. He works through bad, he works through good, people, events, and it just doesn't seem making lemonade out of lemons all the time in this week's reading. I won't leave you here long, but we need to get through the end of Genesis, so we are jumping ahead to Genesis chapter 50. A couple years ago, Lads to Leaders used Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, and so I made that slide out of that particular verse as their theme verse, and I think that's a good theme verse. God meant it for good. Joseph is the one that sets up Exodus at the end of this chapter. But before he does, some interesting things happen. I mean, in chapter 49, Jacob blesses everybody and dies, right? In chapter 50, we have Jacob is embalmed. And something I didn't realize before, did you notice that Jacob was mourned for 70 days according to chapter 50, verse 3? Well, if you jump all the way back to, well, not all the way back. If you look ahead to Numbers and Deuteronomy, Numbers chapter 20, verse 29, Aaron was mourned for 30 days. And Deuteronomy 34:8, Moses was mourned for 30 days. Jacob got treated like a pharaoh. That 70-day period of mourning was traditional for the pharaohs. 30 was customary for the Israelites. So I found that kind of interesting. And at the very end, chapter 50, verse 24, this is where Joseph pretty much tees up Exodus. So we lose Joseph here at the end of chapter 50. We lost Jacob at the end of 49, and now we're jumping straight into Exodus, which Joseph has set up for us. Does anybody want to say anything about this one before we move into book 2? All right then. You must have.
We know that, but even just their mourning Jacob's dead for 40 days, rather 70 days rather than the usual 30. That just to me goes to show even more what a
Carlos saying, it's clear that Joseph was important to Egypt and Pharaoh, I guess.
His character was goodness.
Yeah. And he clearly was. Gail?
Verse 3 said 40 days were required for Joseph, for Jacob, but the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days.
Yeah, isn't that neat?
So they,
Just like Carla was saying, he was a big deal to them.
We saved him,
Well, yeah.
basically.
Yeah, he did, from the famine, that's true. Yeah. So, we're of course, we're just at the very beginning of the Bible itself, and we're in the first 5 books, which probably could be better described as the 5 volumes of a book. It's called the Pentateuch, the Torah. The pre-Mosaic record is over, and now we're going into the part where we're going to have a new superstar on the scene, a new setting, or I guess Egypt, and Moses will be the stars of the upcoming show. Torah means law, and as in law and prophets, like Jesus said in Matthew 5:17. Probably written somewhere around 1500 BC. If you differ on dates or lengths of time or things like that, then that's fine, because you can find a lot of different dates, which I did. So I tried to throw out not that many, so that we wouldn't have to deal with it. But I did put some stuff in here with dates. Moses was a wise guy. He wrote a lot of stuff down. If you take Exodus 24:4 literally, you could say he wrote everything down. Everything God ever said, Moses wrote down. I know that's not what that says, but I like that you could probably misinterpret it that way. It's kind of neat. He probably had access to a lot of records, didn't he? We are entering into a period of time where Egypt is significant, and they were the written record begins with Egypt. Moses was directed by the Holy Spirit to write the first 5 books of the Bible, clearly. But I don't doubt that he had a lot of access to Egyptian records, which might have been useful for him in doing so. Either way, what he wrote down is what God wrote down. There is I took a snippet of a timeline. I think there were 7 timelines in here when I finished up, and I just said, I made myself pick one. I made a little loop around kind of the section where we are, and you can see the slavery in Egypt there. Aaron, Moses. Over here, Jacob. And there's a big old white gap in between them, of course, because we know there's a big time gap coming up soon. I like the Bible Project. I know a lot of people like the Bible Project summary pictures there. Of course, we don't need all of Exodus. That's our little section of Exodus. Exodus means departure, exit, going out. In Hebrew, the book of Exodus was known as the book of, anybody know this? Because I didn't know this. The book of names. The names of the sons of Israel, if you extrapolate that a little bit. The book of names of the sons of Israel. And we get salvation, deliverance, we get redemption. These are themes that come out big time in Exodus. There's a zoom in on that. Like I said already, we've got a new period. It's the Mosaic period. We've got a new star, Moses, and we've got 18 chapters that represent about 3 months, but coming up here in a minute. But let's get started, because the 3 months doesn't start until after verse 7. So let's look at Exodus chapter 1, verse 7, and I'm highlighting the word 70 there because that's just an interesting point, that you can find that there were 70 descendants of Jacob in Egypt there at the beginning, including Joseph, before all of them died. But if you look at different translations that use different texts, you find the number 70 and you find the number 75. And I have seen how both can be supported, thanks to Arthur. Appreciate that. I looked at that, so I will let you do that on your own. But it's just interesting that there's Hebrew texts that say 70, and there's Greek texts that say 75. So
when they say 70, they're really only talking about the male descendants, right? They're not listed all the.
is that what it is? I don't remember. I decided I wasn't deep diving on this because I'd been off on enough tangents.
I tried to count it up and never came up to 70.
Carly, finish counting. I'll get with you after. Carla's gonna count during. Does anybody remember? I don't remember how you deduce 70 versus 75, because I decided not to, but both can be supported. And you know, we're getting ready to jump ahead 400 years. That's a reference to Genesis 15:13. Just like the 70 and the 75, you'll see the number 430 years in some scriptures and 400 in other scriptures, both of which can be supported, both of which end at the same point, but their starting reference is slightly different. So some 400 years are going to zoom forward here in a minute, and that's probably all I need to do, because one of my favorite childhood movies will cover the rest better than I can. So now, Billy, can you just cue up the Ten Commandments? You guys can stay late, right? Sorry, I just couldn't. I couldn't resist that, because I don't think anybody can do Moses better than Charlton Heston. Egypt, when we conjure up Egypt, we think of this kind of imagery, don't we? Sphinxes and those headdresses, if you will, with the cobra on it, and pyramids, and the Nile River. All that stuff is I think most of us probably think that way, or along those imagery lines when we think of Egypt. But like I said earlier, the written record really begins with Egypt, and there's no record of the Red Sea incident that we're going to read about later, when the Egyptians are all smushed by the Red Sea coming back together. But is there any reason for that? Anybody got a thought on that? Why would there not be a written record of that? Which makes it easy for people to say, that's just figurative. You know, that stuff didn't really happen. Anybody got a thought on why that might not be written down? Yeah, that's not a thing to be proud of at all, is it? So yeah, there is not really a record. Apparently that was kind of a rule. They didn't write down stuff that disgraced or embarrassed the pharaohs. That wasn't part of it. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure that, I don't know how many eyewitnesses came back from that, because it sounds like they all got swallowed up by the Red Sea. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Egypt, here's the Great Pyramid. That pyramid is dated such that Abraham himself could have laid eyes on it, which I find pretty neat. I can't imagine seeing something that you might wonder if Abraham saw, you know. He was said to, the historian Josephus, in fact, said that Abraham brought a knowledge of astronomy and arithmetic to the Egyptians. And like I said, the written word began with them, and a few hundred years ago, or maybe around 1800, somewhere in that neck of the woods, they found the Rosetta Stone. Some of you may have been to the museum, I think, in England to see that. But that gave us a lot of insight into what hieroglyphics mean that we didn't have before that time. Our section of Exodus is the first 18 chapters. Main character is Moses. The setting is Egypt, and really you could draw a couple lines there. And that's really primitive PowerPoint work. Don't tell Joey back there. But you could separate that, where those gray lines separate those three sections. That's pretty much 40 years each of Moses' life. The preparation, first couple chapters, the sending, and then, of course, the big stuff between chapters 5 and 18. And now we've got the Israelites who were in Egypt 400 years ago in seemingly a peaceful manner, now are not, are they? They're slaves. There's a new dynasty. It says the new Pharaoh did not know Joseph. There's a lot to be learned by digging into the history of who the leaders of Egypt were before this time versus who they are now. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but I think at whatever verse it is, 1237 later on, Exodus 12:37 says there's 600,000 men of fighting age, which would be 20 or over. So sounds like there's probably a few million people, Israelites, enslaved in Egypt at this time. So the new Pharaoh doesn't like it, does he? What's he afraid of? Yeah, all they need is a good invader to get behind, don't they? So he's concerned about that. So what does he do? Tells the midwives to kill the babies. This might be the meanest guy we've run into so far. He's going to kill baby boys because he needs to curb the growth here, doesn't he? Keep the fighting manpower down a little bit. And what happens when he orders that? Because obviously he orders the Hebrew midwives to do that, and do they do that? They do not. I think it'd be difficult for anybody who serves as in a role to bring life into the world to drown the babies that they bring out of the mothers. That's just crazy to think about. Yes, Becca. So what Becca was saying is that other nations that were conquered became part of Egypt, or were absorbed or assimilated into Egypt. But you're saying the Israelites, part of the reason they might have wound up slaves is because they would not be assimilated. Yeah, okay. Okay. They were clearly different. It makes sense that they would wipe out a population until they begged for mercy, and then they drag them back to, I mean, let's face it, we've seen the pictures of pyramids before. All of us have seen pictures of ancient Egypt. There's a lot of work to be done in Egypt, isn't there? They built a lot of those pyramids, and it took years to build some of that stuff. I thought it was funny that I'd never thought about this before. You know, you hear these stories as a child, you think, okay, the midwives didn't do what Pharaoh said, good for them. They were, heralded for it, rewarded for it, in fact. There can't just be 2 midwives for all those millions of Israelites, can there? How many midwives do you think there were? And I just did a little digging, but it seems that a lot of people think they may have been head midwives. I don't really know. Anybody got a thought on that? Let's jump ahead to, I made this cool slide because this painting, or I don't know what you call it. Is it a painting? It's a picture that's painted on the walls of a tomb in Egypt. It's dated the mid-15th century, I guess, but it's supposed to represent brick making in Egypt. And you can see every aspect in the picture of brick making. And it included stuff like, there's they had to get water over here, and then they had to get water, and they had to knead the clay, and they had to carry the clay, and then they had to pack it into the molds. But they had to use straw when they packed it into the molds. And that's one interesting thing you don't see in the picture. You don't see any straw, do you? Does anybody see any straw? And which comes to bear later. It's interesting that later on the Israelites have the straw taken away from them that was being provided for their brick making. But in the spirit of meanness that's constant with Egypt, they took the straw away and said, go get your own straw. So funny that the picture doesn't show it. Doesn't mean they're connected in any way, but I find it interesting that it doesn't show it. Now we have in Exodus chapter 2, we've got Moses, name means drawn from the water. Moses hidden by his mother for 3 months, then sent upriver in a basket. Does anybody know what the word basket there is translated from? The Hebrew word basket is translated from. If you don't, that's cool. I don't know why I'd even ask that. It's not fair. Do you know what word is also translated from the same word earlier in the Bible? Thank you. That's not unusual to know, I guess. All right, good job. Isn't that cool? Safe through water theme is being established here. Moses in the basket. Noah with the ark. Really, do you guys think this was a very well thought through plan involving Miriam, who's conveniently in the right place at the right time to offer assistance? Isn't it a neat story to see it all play out? And then Miriam's probably 7 years old when she's part of this plan. Aaron would have been 3, doesn't sound like he was involved. She's conveniently available to fetch a midwife. She happens to know one, Moses' mother, correct? And she keeps him and nurses him for some period of time that's not clear, maybe 2 years, maybe as much as 6, sometime past Moses' weaning. And then she delivers him back to Pharaoh's daughter. We don't really know her name unless you're Jewish. If you're Jewish, you got a lot more resources than we have. Jewish people have this book called the Jewish Book of Jubilees, or the Second Genesis, which says she was Starmuth or something like that. So they have cool things to learn from, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. I had a friend who used to say, just, use it, but spit out the bones, because sometimes it has some interesting information, but you don't want to get it mixed up with what's in the Bible. There's another place in 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 18. A daughter of Pharaoh is mentioned by name, and her name is Bithia. Don't know if that's her or not, but it could be. Comments, questions? Anybody ever seen this painting? It's just one of those things you stumble upon where I like pictures anyway. This painting sold, it's called The Finding of Moses, and it sold in 2010. Anybody want to guess? $35.9 million. And I think it was a record, an auction record at the time. I don't know if they beat it since. $35.9 million. Anonymous bidder, so don't go looking for somebody with that kind of money to help you out. Okay, we're still in Exodus 2, kind of establish where we're at here. Moses is grown up now and he kills the Egyptian. It's interesting in chapter 2, verse 11, that it says that he defends, when he kills the Egyptian, he defends his own people. Did y'all notice that? I guess in my mind I've wondered at times, did Moses know he was Hebrew? But it seems that he did. Tim? Yeah. That's what I think. I don't know that either. Tim said it seems like the narrative is using words that suggest that he knows those are his people. That he's a Hebrew. No, didn't know. Oh, you're saying the narrative says? I think he did, but I don't have any proof. You're saying Charlton Heston didn't know? I don't know if that's proof. What, Carla? Did you say?
I said, I think he knew because he got so enraged to the point of killing.
I like that point. Yeah.
You think his mother told him while she was
That's
nursing him?
what I was.
I mean, he really had it. His mother was his mother.
He went all the way to age 7 or something,
Yeah.
but she wouldn't have imparted some knowledge.
He would have been old enough to remember that. If he said
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think he knew, and but I don't know he knew. But let's see. Oh, after the fight, of course, Moses has the event where he kills the Egyptian, and the next day he breaks up a fight between 2 Hebrews. Do you remember what the one Hebrew says to him when he breaks it up? Yeah, you're gonna kill us like you killed that Egyptian, and he also says, "Who made you judge?" Which is kind of funny, prophetically speaking. But yeah, Moses, the jig is up, isn't it? Moses he's afraid he's found out, and he is found out because Pharaoh finds out. So he takes off to Midian, doesn't he? And I think thus begins the next part. The first section of Moses' life was 40 years. So here he is beginning in Midian, the next section of 40 years. And you see that he crosses the Sinai Peninsula there. And I'm not a geography expert, but that little triangle gets a lot of action here in the coming chapter, as we'll see. And he has a kid while he's in Midian. He has a kid named Gershom. Maybe he has 2. Meets a nice, wise man named Jethro, among other names. He's got at least 3 names. Jethro's easier to remember. Anybody know how far that was? I had to do the math. I even got a scale on there. I read that it was 300 miles, and I read that was a 10-day camel ride or a 2-week walk. So if you can make that in 2 weeks, you're better than me, because it would have taken me longer. So, what'd you say, Carla? It's a lot, yeah, it's a lot of miles a day. I wrote at the bottom, it's time. I mean, I sped through the 40 years of Moses, and he spends 40 years in Midian with, his wife is Zipporah, and before God decides it's time. I did borrow another image from the Ten Commandments movie there. There's Charlton Heston. It really is one of the better ones, I think. There's a lot of cartoony ones like these other two. But we got a pretty powerful section here in Exodus chapter 3, going all the way into 4:17, because God calls out to Moses from this burning bush. And he calls his name twice. Did you notice that? I think people tend to notice that. I noticed that. Did he ever call other people twice so far? He did, didn't he? He calls Abraham a couple times by name, and I think later on he'll do the same for Samuel, if I'm not mistaken. I find that interesting. So here's the big sell. Moses takes some convincing, doesn't he? What do you think? You think it's important that there's a snake involved? I do. I think it's a very cool Steve Irwin type moment, where he's got to grab it by the tail after his staff turns into a snake. There's the leper's hand where he puts it in his cloak and he pulls it out in this leprous, and he puts it in and takes it back out in his knot. And I read this, that there was a belief at that time, and Israel thought this, was that if you had leprosy, it was a punishment. God was angry with you. So would God have been angry with Moses at this particular moment? It's funny because Moses is pushing back on the whole calling here. So that's a neat little parallel that has been made. Snakes are a big deal in Egypt. The Pharaoh's got it on his head thing. Moses' staff can turn into Moses' staff is pretty cool, isn't it? Would like to get my hands on one of those. And I actually found where there's a couple museums claim to have it. I'm like, why are you just keeping it in the museum? There's so many things you could be doing with that. And do you think the staff, there's a few times where the staff is in Moses' hands and there's a staff in Aaron's hands. Is it the same staff? Or is it two? They both have got their own staffs. What do you think? I don't really know the answer to this. I just wondered. It wasn't anything I tried to study, but I did find some mentions that maybe it was the same, but I found people saying, nah, they had their own. So, curious. I'd take either one if I could get my hands on Aaron's. That'd be okay, but I think Moses might be better. Okay, we finished this period of 40 years, and Moses is going to head back. Is it that late? I see people coming out. It's not time yet, is it? Okay, we got some time. This is weird. Let me jump. This passage right here, Exodus chapter 4, verses 24 through 26. I'm going to read it. It came about at the lodging place on the way that the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and threw it at Moses' feet. And she said, "You are indeed a bridegroom of blood to me." So he let him alone. At that time, she said, "You are a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision." Here's some questions. Whoops. Who did God want to kill? Do you want to kill the kid? Or did he want to kill Moses? Is it Moses? You sure? Okay. The preacher says it's Moses. I'm going with it. But was Moses circumcised? Not a fair question. I don't know. Was the other son? Was he there? There's another son that hasn't been mentioned up to this point in our reading, but we can find out by jumping ahead that there is another son. Was Zipporah mad? She was ticked off. I think she hated circumcision. This is a very unusual passage, but I just wanted to see if you guys want to talk about it, but nobody seems to want to talk about it, and that's okay. It is circumcision. Then we get to Exodus chapter 5. Moses and Aaron take God's plan and go to Pharaoh and execute it without a hitch, right? Everything goes according to plan. No, they managed to get the straw for the bricks taken away here in chapter 5. That's where that happens. So that's Pharaoh's reaction, is take the straw away. In the beginning of chapter 6, God settles Moses down because, none of this went the way I think they thought it would. First, God had to sell Moses on the whole thing, and he had to give him Aaron, which obviously he had that in his pocket the whole time. He had to give him Aaron to help him talk. And then when he finally sells them on it and they go to Pharaoh, it just blows up in their face, or it seems to. So God settles things down. The foreman is complaining, saying, thanks for me. There's one particular version that I read that said the foreman says, Israelite foreman says, thanks for making us stink in front of Pharaoh. So I found that kind of a good translation to read. And then God settles him down, and we begin enduring the plagues, which we haven't even gotten to. I need to ask a question, though. I forgot what it was. Let's look at the plagues as quick as we can. Okay, that a lot of people like to make. I don't even know how to. Let me. Okay, we have 5 chapters and 9 plagues before getting to the one that God says in chapter 11, verse 1, that's going to make Pharaoh let him go, right? The last plague, the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, that's the one that ends the deal, and Pharaoh cuts him loose. Why did we need 10 plagues? Anyone? That's a good point. And I put that on here. A lot of people like to talk about the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, and when it was Pharaoh and when it was God. So I put these little, they're not up there yet. Oh, yeah, they are. Okay, the little circles are whether God hardened Pharaoh's heart or Pharaoh hardened his own heart, or we can't really tell, ambiguous. Because a lot of people like to talk about that, and it's interesting that the second half of the plagues is when God gets involved with hardening Pharaoh's heart. Tell them they can come in. You can come in. It's okay. They'll make me sit down in a minute. And then those are the gods on the blue strips under each of the plagues. Those are the gods of Egypt that God would have been slamming with that particular plague. And you can, I won't try to read them all because we're running out of time here, but it seems that might have been part of his purpose, huh? To make a lot of the gods, if not all, of the gods of Egypt look bad.
More than once, God tells Moses, I'm bringing these, when he would bring a plague, before he'd say, so that you may know that I am God.
Mhm.
And then at other times, he occasionally would say, so that Pharaoh will know that I'm God. And then another time, so that the world or people around would know that I'm God. So he was, in effect, giving Egypt, I think, opportunity to, Pharaoh and all to repent, even though he knew he wouldn't. He was still trying to show that he was God, or he is God, which is kind of a merciful thing in a way. He wanted people to come to him to know the true God.
Do y'all think, so I won't get to everything I have here before we're done. Do you think in the last plague, the plague of the firstborn, God says Israel is his firstborn. This is some payback that's happening here. We have probably going all the way back to when the Hebrew babies were being killed. But do you think it's possible that any Egyptians could have been saved from the 10th plague by obeying putting the blood on the door?
They didn't know about it.
How did they not know about it? There's millions of Israelites.
God spoke to the Israelites.
Yeah.
And he didn't speak to the Egyptians.
There's a lot of squalling lambs, though. A lot of noise, a lot of blood. I just wonder. I wonder if any of them tried it. I can't say whether, even if they did it to the T, because they might not have been the kind of people that were willing to slaughter a lamb.
Egyptians could not stand shepherds. They didn't like lambs because they were the slaves for like 100 years under shepherds.
Good point.
That's why Israel lived in Goshen. They couldn't stay with the land.
So it's interesting, though, because we've had 9 plagues up to that point. And at some point, I can't remember which plague it was, there were some, it was before the hail, there were some Egyptians that pulled their livestock in. I mean, they're getting the picture here. It's God is God, and all this stuff is real. So they pulled their livestock in. And I guess their livestock was saved because of that. It doesn't say that, but you presume so. But it just made me wonder. I don't think so, because it says later on that there's not a household that didn't have somebody, didn't lose somebody. I don't think that meant an animal, even though firstborn animals did die in this thing too. But I think they probably did not, were not spared, even if they tried to follow what the Israelites did, which they probably didn't. But it's an interesting thing to talk about. That's got a lot going on there at the end of our section of Exodus. Their slavery ends. They get out. You get the. That was a funny thing I heard in the wilderness was, is it because there are no graves in Egypt you dragged us out here in the wilderness to make it? I thought that was a funny verse. I'll try to jump through it, see if there's a cool picture of the. Have you ever seen the pictures of the debunked and fake pictures of artifacts on the bottom of the Red Sea that are supposed to be pieces of the chariots of Egypt? It really looks cool, but it's fake, so I didn't put them in here because, here they are crossing the Sinai Peninsula, maybe to just choose your route because I don't know which way they went either. I mean, we got some points of reference in the scriptures, but we don't really know. I really didn't get a chance to talk about Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin, but some of you are old enough to remember that. I was a little boy, and later in life I remember realizing that this was a conflict between Egypt and Israel in my lifetime when I was a child in the 70s, and my father watched the evening news every night. So I heard these names, I heard these countries, and then later in life I figured out that there's the same people that were in conflict here in our reading, so we won't go there. That's all. I'll sit down and shut up, I guess. Sorry I didn't get through it all, but I got through a lot of it. Questions or comments before we stop? Who's leading singing? Joey? He's not even out yet. Let's keep talking. If you need to go, get up and go get a mint. Stump, you can come in. It's okay. Come on in.
Hebrews 11 says about Moses by faith. So he did know who he was.
Oh.
That he was one of the Israelite people. And that's the reason that he did these things.
It says that clearly in Hebrews 11 in that Heroes chapter.
About verse 24.
That's neat. Thank you. So Hebrews 11, when it gets to Moses, it makes it apparently clear that he knew who he was. Are you ready?
Were you waiting on me?
I didn't see you over there. Were you there a long time?
No, I just got here.
Should I turn this off, Billy? Or just, all right.
Our invitation song is number 947. 947. You may just have to use your book tonight. I don't know what's happening back there. 947. And then let's sing number 664 now. 664. There stands a rock on shores of time that rears to heaven its head sublime. That rock is cleft, and they are blessed who find within this cleft a rest. Some build their hopes on the ever-drifting sand, some on their fame or their treasure or their land. Mine's on the rock that forever shall stand, Jesus, the rock of ages. That rock's the cross, its arms outspread, celestial glory banked its head. To its firm base my all I bring, and to the cross of ages cling. Some build their hopes on the ever-drifting sand, some on their fame or their treasure or their land. Mine's on the rock that forever Jesus, the rock of ages. That rock's a tower whose lofty height illumined with heaven's unclouded light, opes wide its gates beneath the dome, where saints find rest with Christ at home. Some build their hopes on the ever-drifting sand, some on their fame or their treasure or their land. Mine's on the rock that forever shall stand, Jesus, the rock of ages.
Let's make it easy and come up here, Billy. Is that okay? All right. You know, I recently read a poll that was it was a very recent poll, and it was collecting information from people who had left the church and weren't attending anymore, and the reasons why. And the reasons were troubling. Then I also had recently read an article that was probably 15 or 16 years old, and it was about a well-known author named Anne Rice, if you've ever heard of her. She wrote a lot of gothic junk and vampire stuff, but she had been a church member. I don't know what her denomination was, but she left church, and her reason was the people. She said, I'm a Christian, but I'm not a member of the church anymore. So those two things sort of kind of jived for me, and I thought, man, it's both of them concluded that people are the problem. And here we are, the church, the assembly of people, and we're the problem. We can ruin any good thing, can't we? We can really foul up just about anything we lay our hands on if we put our mind to it, and sometimes if we don't try very hard. I thought of Luke chapter 17, verses 1 through 3. And it says, Jesus said to his disciples, things that cause people to sin are bound to come, but woe to that person through whom they come. It would be better for him to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around his neck than for him to cause one of these little ones to sin. So watch yourselves. You've ever seen a millstone or a picture of a millstone? You can kind of get the gist of what's happening here. I mean, that to me, that says, you cause one of these little ones to sin, you're better off dead. That's heavy, isn't it? That's a lot. I would take that very seriously because it's also repeated in the other two Gospels that are Matthew and Mark. So anyway, I just thought, I hope that I've not been the reason for somebody to no longer be here among us or among any place that I have assembled with Christians before. And I certainly hope, and I haven't done that to a child, and I hope none of us ever will. But I think we should take that seriously when we interact with one another and when we interact with the kids we're around here at church. So that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. And we will offer the invitation now before Joey leads us in this song. So if you have any needs, prayer, just something that's on your heart you need to unburden yourself of, or if you're ready to become a Christian, you're not one yet, then let's talk about it. So come forward as we stand and sing. Thanks.
Jesus, let us come to know you. Let us see you face to face. Touch us, hold us, use us, mold us only. Let us
Thank you for being here tonight. We're going to close by making a few announcements. I'm going to do them backwards tonight if you would allow me to do that. So I'm going to mention the things of the congregation that are going on. First of all, I would remind you that Sister Friends things Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. And Laura's here tonight if you want to ask her any questions, but bring a brunch item. 10. Sorry. I don't read too well. 10 o'clock. Thank you very much. Silver Saints next Wednesday at 10 o'clock. That will be the 11th. So that's confusing too. So the things that aren't confusing are those that need to be on our prayer list tonight. So I want to finish up with that. First of all, Jamie's here tonight. Remember, Miss Bunny has a fractured arm, and she is not able to put any weight on her arm at this time, so it's hard for her to get up. So she's not able to be up, but please remember her. Jason Patton last week was in the hospital, and he got to go home, I think, on Saturday, Friday or Saturday, and he just wanted to be on our prayer list and asked that what put him there would not reoccur. And so please remember to pray for Jason if you would. Also, Linda Goucher talked about her AFib. She's had a treatment last week and is doing better. For the last report that I have, still okay, Becca. Becca's thumbs up. Julie Craig had an outpatient, I said surgery, but she said it was actually in the room yesterday for her knee. They had to knock her out for a second so they could put some more rotation in her knee. She said she woke up in tears, and so it was very painful, but we're thankful that she's able to be here tonight, and she's going to be able to go back to her therapy. So we want to remember her. Charlie Rogers called today, said that he has a PET scan next week on the 11th, and then a follow-up on the 13th, and he wants to pray that the PET scan shows that his cancer is either in remission or receding, and so please remember to pray for Charlie if you would. Remember also Rachel Broadway, still at home, not able to be out recovering from hers. And last but not least, I want to share with you tonight, Brother Rick Caudle has, as you know, has had lots of symptoms in the last year of things that weren't right, and he's went through a myriad of tests, more than I ever want to go through. Recently, he has gone through more tests. He would like to share with y'all tonight what his diagnosis was. He has an adenoma on his pituitary gland, and it will require surgery. He has seen a neurosurgeon. He has seen so far he has seen a GP and traded in a GP, which is your general practitioner. He's seen an ENT, a neurologist, a neuro-ophthalmologist. He's had an MRI with contrast, an MRI without contrast, and on it goes, on and on it goes. Already what he has had to endure, but he does know that he's got surgery coming up, and he asks for your prayers for the time in between now when he gets to see all of the specialists in his surgery. He wants you to pray for him and for Kathy and for Jason as they go through this time of trial, and also pray for the time when that surgery is done. It is operable. It's not carcinogenic at this time, and so we want to pray for that. But Rick wanted to share that with you. And his doctors have told him, among other things, that a lot of the symptoms that he's had in the past year, some of the treatments that he's had to endure in the past year, are probably because of this adenoma. It's about 20 millimeters, and it's a slow growing, but it means that it has been there for a while. And so he asked for your prayers, and he's here tonight. I'm sure he would be glad to talk to you and tell you more, and I hope that I have done that justice. But he wanted to make that prayer. He wanted to make that prayer request because he feels like and knows that the prayers that you all say on his behalf mean more than all the medical tests that he could ever have. So anybody else have anything that I do not know? Let's bow for a word. Yes, I'm sorry. Caleb.
My uncle
Tim.
he's in the ICU
He-
at Sonoma North. That's why we were late, because I went to see him.
Right.
So it's kidney function, but he has dementia, so he's kind of at the end stages.
So it is in care, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot better, so it's like the beginning of the end kind of thing. But
Yeah.
He's it's pitiful, so he just needs
Yeah.
prayer.
And I knew that, but I've already forgotten it. My brain's not big enough to write down everything that I need, so sorry for that. But most of us know Tim. We heard him preach for years and years, and we know he's had lots of struggles in the last few years. So please, if you would, remember to pray for Tim. Anybody else? Let's bow for a dismissal prayer. God, we're thankful tonight that we can petition you in prayer. We're thankful, Father, that you've provided that mechanism, that Jesus, as our propitiation, stands at your right side and makes us be able to come to you and ask you the things that we need in prayer. And we ask tonight, Father, that you would bless all of these that we have mentioned that are sick and that are confined and that are shut in, those who have surgeries coming up and those who have tests coming up. We know, Father, that our prayer life can mean a lot for us, for a peace that passes understanding, and we ask for that for these folks tonight that have asked for our prayers, that you would be with them, you would suit a blessing for them, and know that if they are in good hands and that if you're for them, no one can be against them. We ask that you'd please bless them in the days and times to come. We thank you, Father, for the privilege of being here tonight, and we're mindful of the weather, and we pray that we would have safe passage home. And we pray that the lesson that we heard tonight, and we're thankful for those that presented the lesson tonight, Don. We pray, Father, that we would put these things that we read in your word in our lives, that we would be the kind of servants that you would have us to be. Pray that we would say and do those things that others might see you through us. Father, we thank you for the privilege of being your children. We're mindful of the blessings that we have in Christ. And we pray that you would watch over and care for us in the days to come. And watch over us as we labor in this community, that we might be that light, that others might see you. We know that there are others in the congregation, Father, that we've not mentioned tonight that need those prayers also. We ask that you would see to each one of them. Go with us as we leave, Father. Forgive us of the things we've done wrong. Help us to be more like Jesus tomorrow than we were today. He's asked in his name. Amen.